Welcome to this week's show with Who's in the House with Michael. Today I've got Richard with me. Richard
Strautman.
Strautman, I'm sorry. I almost
Good
left
German.
the T out.
Good German name.
Right on. Well, thanks for coming in today.
Glad to be here.
I love to get to know, everybody knows I like to get to know people on camera a little bit, so we're gonna break it down a little bit. Where are you born and raised, Richard?
Born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee.
Really?
Yeah.
How long were you there?
Oh, I was there initially for 21 years. I went to, grew up, went to school there.
So
Went off, came back later, went back to school
All
again
right.
in Memphis. But
So what was it like growing up in Memphis? Music? Big music scene?
Oh, absolutely. But it was most interesting because I was there during all the Martin Luther King
Oh.
issues and civil law, and
Oh, wow.
it was a wild time.
Oh, wow. That's
Absolutely,
crazy.
It was a wild
Yeah.
time.
So, what kind of work did your parents do?
My dad was an executive with Kimberly-Clark. I graduated from school, and guess where I went to work?
Of course. That
Kimberly-Clark.
feels like the normal thing at that time
Well, it's what they did.
in history and
My
location.
dad went to work for Kimberly-Clark and retired. My brother went to work for Kimberly-Clark and retired. I went to work for Kimberly-Clark. After 2 years, I said, no, corporate life is not for me. So
Did your mom
I
work,
bailed
or
out.
she stayed home to take care of family?
She was a stay-at-home mom.
All
A very good one. Yeah.
How many siblings do you have?
Older brother, younger sister.
You're the middle guy.
I'm the middle guy, the one that has to
You
get
got
the
issues?
attention. Has to get the attention.
So, what kind of work did everybody do at Kimberly-Clark?
That's paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Dad, was he in sales?
No, he was the mill manager. He physically ran the mill that produced
I feel like that's
Yeah.
hard work.
It is. I actually worked there during the summers.
Yeah.
But I was able to get a union pay summer job, which was nice for paying for school. But yeah, no, it was totally eye-opening about, oh, this is the real world.
Yeah.
This I might actually have to, pack toilet paper in a box for a living.
Was it like a noisy environment? Is it a dirty environment? Is it machinery and a lot going on?
One of my best jobs, one of my most interesting jobs during the summer, was when the big rolls come off the machines. They're massive. They're probably as tall as, maybe not quite as tall as this room is, but they come off and they're hot paper. And then they get moved over to a converting machine that then converts it to whatever the final product is. But sometimes the batch is bad. So my only job was, I had a Bowie knife on my belt, and I had to climb up on top of the roll an inch along the way and cut the paper off the roll till it got down to the core so they could recycle the paper. That was my one job for one summer.
That sounds horrible.
Hot, dirty,
Horrible.
horrible.
That's
A motivator to finish college. Right?
for sure. You said, what were your sister and brother doing back then?
Brother was in the Air Force flying planes,
All right, cool.
and my sister was 10 years younger, so she was still in school.
All right. So, what about hobbies and interests growing up? Sports, music, any of that?
Basketball. I played basketball, organized basketball till I was in my 40s.
Yeah.
Then the knees gave out, and a little longer. But yeah, big golfer at one point in time.
All right.
But later in life, my love was racing sailboats. I did that in Port Washington here in New York for like 8 years. Every Saturday, every Sunday, out on the water, going
That's
back and
amazing.
forth around buoys.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm going to come back to that.
Yeah.
So, you grow up in Memphis, not much on the music scene in your family, much more about the sports?
Yeah.
Hoosier type family into the
I'm sorry?
basketball? Like Hoosiers into the basketball.
Oh, Memphis State had a decent basketball team,
Yeah.
so that's who.
So, you worked for a summer at Kimberly-Clark, and
Right.
that's when you decided this isn't going to be for me?
Yeah.
So,
Well, I was going to college, but that
You
was
already had
like the
a plan.
motivator to make sure
Okay.
I did well. And
So, what school are you going to go to, and what was the thought? What were you going to be when you grew up?
I was going to be a college professor. I
Oh.
was going to teach economics.
Oh.
So I had an undergraduate degree in economics and business admin. I was going to graduate school, and then this silly thing called Vietnam War came along,
Mhm.
and they ended all the graduate deferments, and so I did not go to graduate school.
I love economics. I minored in it at RIT.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
all theory.
Yeah, I know. It's graphs.
You put these graphs together, and that makes sense. Then you put these graphs together, like, wait a minute, the previous graphs contradict that. I don't know.
To
took a
this
while.
day, I'm still a visual. Everything has to be in some kind of
Yeah.
infographic or graphic
Yeah, yeah.
form or whatever.
So you were supposed to. So you went to school for what? Business administration first, and then
yeah.
it was supposed to be graduate school for economics or for teaching.
To teach.
Teaching, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then did you get drafted? Well, what happened?
I took a job with Kimberly-Clark. I moved to Wisconsin, and I was one of the first people that were computer programmers, because computer programmers didn't even exist in those days.
With cards, punch cards?
Punch cards and reel-to-reel tape. And I was there about a week, and I said, there's no way I can get any kind of reserve unit, because there were years waiting lists because people didn't want to go to Vietnam. And I made the calls, and be darned if I didn't get into an Army Reserve unit. So I served in the Army for 8 years as a reservist, but never had to go to Vietnam.
Not
and
deployed.
So many of my fraternity brothers were not so lucky, and
Yeah, it was
went
quite
to
a time.
Nam and didn't come back. Yeah.
When did you graduate college as an
Oh,
undergraduate?
you're going to do math on me here.
Why? Because the history is so amazing back then.
Yeah, 64.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's as an undergraduate, you graduated college at 64.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. So
So-
you're really deep in it.
Yeah.
Right in the heart of it then.
yeah. No,
I mean, 1969 is the big year where all of it, the world changed a
Right,
lot, but
right.
you really had a lot of history getting
Yeah,
up to that point.
yeah.
So what happened then? Did you ever get to go back to school after?
Oh, I eventually went back and got an MBA after I worked for a few years, but I worked for Kimberly-Clark for a few years. But then I took a job with a business in San Antonio, Texas, that was one of the early developers of what existed before the internet existed. We were the only thing that could connect computers together and send information back and forth. And so I joined them at $50 million, and we grew to $600 million before it blew up. So it was a fascinating.
It's amazing.
Yeah, as soon as they announced open architecture Ethernet, we were dead, because we refused to be, we have a private architecture, we're the industry leader. Yeah, 3 years later, we were a $300 million company.
Wow.
So
That's
I watched it go up and go down.
It's amazing how the technology just, exponentially moves so quick. It sneaks up on you. I have an uncle that's an MIT graduate from the 60s.
Yeah.
Right? Punch cards, learned Pascal and all the other different languages for computer, Fortran, right?
Right?
I call him every now and then, give him tips on how to use his iPhone. You know what I mean? Like, it's the easiest device, but wow, there's so many things that have evolved since
Yeah.
then.
And now I'm deep into AI, so it's just people go, AI. I go, it's just another part of the process. These computers didn't do much. Now they can do a lot more.
Yeah. I'm already starting to see misuses of the AI out there.
It's a risk, but it's here.
Yeah,
So you have to learn how to deal with it.
embrace
Right,
it,
right.
and this, we need some bumpers up, I think.
Yeah.
On the rails, just
Yeah.
to make sure we don't do something really stupid. But
Yeah.
I kind of like it.
Yeah.
All right. So, what's next for you after you graduated? You were Kimberly-Clark. What was the next move?
Well, I stayed in high tech pretty much until I moved into consulting 20 some odd years ago. I worked for, again, this Ethernet type company. I worked for several manufacturers, printers, a printer company. We were another company where we were the #2 worldwide leader in making read-write heads for disk drives, the little things that read and write data. We were like the #2 in the world that did that. So
Disk drives.
remember those things? Now they're solid state drives.
I
but-
love when you go to the doctor's office, they give you an X-ray and they hand you a disc. You're like, well, where would I put it? Nobody has an out drive anymore. Nobody has a drive.
Oh, I remember when our disk packs were like that big, and you had the big thing and you
The 8-inch
stuck
floppy?
it in. Yeah.
5-inch floppy.
But yeah, so the industry's moved on. So anyway, I stayed in high tech until I eventually said, okay, because I was very lucky. I got to head up pretty much every functional group that exists. I was the head of sales and marketing. I was the CFO of multiple companies. I ran 6 manufacturing plants around the world for one company. So I got to do it all. And I said, hey, that's a good thing to become a consultant.
That's really diverse.
And unusual.
Yeah,
particularly.
because you got the operation side of things. You've got a diverse background in technology, but it's all in the computer world.
Right.
One way or another,
Right.
it's related. Whether it's how we get the messaging across, how we feed the computer, how it physically writes on something, you're in it all the way through.
Right,
And then you go in, you have operations behind you, and then you have the executive stuff of being a CFO. I mean, it's a big difference.
Yeah. Right. And you've really worked in the different areas. Quite often you don't understand, if you push over here in this area, it's going to impact this area.
Yeah.
And this area. So I ended up going to work for KPMG as a partner. And that's what brought me here to New York. I was a partner with KPMG for 5 years.
Where were you before you were in New York?
Well, I've moved 18 times. At the time I was in San Diego, in the Bay Area, KPMG hired me and sent me to Seattle to start up a consulting practice for them in Seattle. Then we won a huge project here on Long Island, and they moved me here to run that. And then I stayed on in the city and started up a consulting practice for them in the city.
All right, before I ask my next question, family? Did you ever marry, children, anything like that?
Married several times.
Okay.
Currently, yes, happily married 20 years. Have a child from an early marriage, and he's with Oracle. He's in the computer computer world.
Okay.
Down in Washington D.C. But yeah.
So when did that family stuff start versus in relation to coming out to Long Island?
Ask the question again.
Were you married and have that first child before you got to Long Island, or after
No,
you got here?
my son was actually born in Memphis.
Okay.
And then I moved to the West Coast and was out in the West Coast. And then I was not married when I moved here. So I met a local Long Island girl who's born and raised and has family here. So we're never going anywhere else but Long Island.
I know you didn't come straight from Memphis to Long Island, and you came from the West Coast.
Yeah.
Was it a bit of a culture shock coming here?
To
Long Island, New York?
Well, I lived in the San Francisco area, so it's different.
People are fake. Here, the direct.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I always say there's only a few states in the United States. There's California, New York, Alaska, Hawaii, and everybody else. So yeah, New York is very unique. California is very unique.
When did you start your sailing career? When did that?
What port? Well, I started in Memphis. I actually, as a scout, explorer scout, we actually
Sunfish.
Actually, it was an 18-foot thistle. Wow, I actually remember that. Yeah.
Interesting.
So we learned to sail on the Mississippi. Or there's a little lake that sticks out of the Mississippi there. So I learned there, and I didn't sail much over the years. A few times I took boats out in the Bay Area and San Francisco. But I moved to Port Washington, and I looked around. There were like 7 yacht clubs, and so I hooked up with a guy. I knew better than to buy a boat. I'd done that before.
Oh, good for you.
So I hooked up with a guy, and I crewed with them. And every Saturday, every Sunday, we went out and spent 3 or 4 hours out in the water running races back and forth. Yeah, loved it.
Were the races like in the Sound? And
usually in the Sound. There's some where you went out. There was one called the Long Race that would leave Port Washington, go all the way out on the eastern island, and come back. That was once a year, but normally they were just, that was all day. That was an all-day race.
I have some minimal sailing experience, but I learned as a kid in camp on a little Mayflower, Sunfish, whatever it was.
Right, yeah.
And then, I'd had opportunities to go out over the years, and then my family, we bought a motorboat. It's a water skiing thing, but in one of the restaurants I worked in, I had an employee that had a sailboat, and they were based right out of like Bayside. Like
Yep.
So we were sailing under the Throgs Neck Bridge.
Yeah.
Which was just very cool. And it was a beautiful 30-something foot,
Yeah,
really
these were 25 footers, but they were nice, 3 or 4 person crew racing team, and it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. Because when you're racing, particularly when you're sailing, it's one thing. When you're racing, you're focused on racing.
Yeah.
So all the rest of the world, all the issues you may have, at work or whatever, they're not in your head. They're, how do I not fall off the boat? How do I not get hit by the boom when it moves across? So,
and sailing and motorboating are very different experiences.
Yeah.
I liken sailing to skiing. You hear the sound. You hear the sheath in the wind. When you're skiing, you hear your skis on the snow.
Yeah.
It's super relaxing because it takes away all the man-made sounds. So it's a very different experience. I'm sure it was a really nice work-life balance for you.
Oh, it was.
To get out and do that and let go of some of the stress that you might have had.
Absolutely. All right. Loved it.
So consulting, you decided to start a consulting business for yourself. How long ago was that?
Let's say 20 years ago.
Okay.
And I was on Long Island, and I went, what's on Long Island? Small businesses. So even though I had consulted at KPMG with billion-dollar corporations.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. What year would you have been here consulting on Long Island? Were we in the 80s or 90s? When are we?
23 years ago.
Oh, okay. So 2000.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Liking that. Because there was a time when Long Island was all Grumman. And when Grumman was done, we converted into a computer-based society.
Right.
That was before you got here.
Grumman was big before I got here. I actually, while here and doing consulting, I actually was the CFO of an aerospace company for 5 years. And they were one of the results of what Grumman had built, but Grumman had already blown up.
The reason I brought that up is I remember the milestone then of when Grumman was done and they closed up, of all these displaced workers that the economy was worried about, And immediately then it was about getting computer education, computer science, computer, and shifting that workforce into a computer arena, which then I think we then kind of unfolded to.
But what's interesting is Grumman created a whole series of second and third tier vendors that still most of them stayed on the island. So rather than selling their parts to Grumman, they sold to Boeing, or they sold to a company who sold to Boeing. So there's still a huge industry here in aerospace component manufacturing, basically, of some
That's
type.
interesting. Yeah, well, there's a lot of history here in aerospace.
Yeah,
Right? It's really kind of the beginning of it.
Yeah.
All right, so so over the years in the consulting, it's kind of evolved a little bit for you, right? I mean, when you started consulting, was in the tech business, helping any tech companies. Were you targeting any particular types of clients to work with?
Well, when I was at KPMG, I was in the communication and media vertical. So we were dealing with telecoms and advertising. We're implementing technology. We're not consulting to technology companies, although, so there were, I don't recall even actually.
Like office level technology or like satellite level technology?
This enterprise applications. So CRMs, full ERP systems, accounting systems, anything that makes the company run.
Okay.
So that's what I did when I was at KPMG. When I got back on Long Island, because of my broad background in running companies, I really focused on broad management consulting, growing a company, financials, improving operations, those kind of things. I was fortunate to run what's called peer-to-peer advisory groups.
Yep.
And I did that for 12 years and had I probably worked with 70 companies over that time period, where they come together once a month and you talk about whatever their issue is. So if it's HR or an employee's got a drinking problem, or they can't find anybody to hire, or my books aren't any good, or I don't know how to sell, I don't know how to do any sales or marketing. We discussed all that every month and every meeting. So that was, as a consultant, you learn just as much from the owners as you give to them. So it's great.
I'm fascinated by your background. I come from the restaurant industry, and the average person doesn't have any idea how much skill the average restaurant person has to have. You're wearing a lot of hats.
Right.
You're a cook, you're a server, you're a bartender, you're a people person, you're a business person, an entrepreneur. You have to be an expert on supply and demand. You have to be inventory management, and it just keeps going on in the marketing, blah, 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 blah. And so we all come out, and when I talk to restaurant guys, it could go into all different areas, right?
Right.
Because they just have the skill sets. They even have, some facilities management experience. We Saturday night, we're on the roof fixing the air conditioner, And I'm talking to you here, and you keep, every time you tell me something you've done, you're really deep in experience. It's really very broad. It is in technology, but I mean, you're peer advisory groups, your know-how, your financial management, and I could see how that brought you to where we are today.
Yep.
That's really what I'm getting at. And I just want to remind everybody, Charlie will post, we'll be on TikTok and Instagram, but ultimately we'll be on Spotify, and the long version will be on YouTube for everybody. So just a real quick reminder there. And we'll, of course, put up all your graphical information if everyone gets in touch with you. So let's talk about currently. Like, what have you been doing the last couple of years of consulting? Where's your business lean toward?
These peer-to-peer advisory groups, and these businesses were all getting better. Many of the members had been on the board for 10 years. They'd grown their company, they'd addressed their issues, they built good systems, they built good financials, and they're going, how do I get out? And I went, I don't know. Oh, you mean how to exit your business? So
when you say get out and exit, we talking about like retirement? We're talking about cashing out,
yes,
on
either. There's two classes of business owners. A lot of the older baby boomers now, they're almost being involuntarily forced to leave, either for health, or they need the money for retirement, or their wife says, no, we're going to go travel. But then there's a voluntary group of people that are much younger. And I've seen some statistics recently that surprisingly, a lot of the people who are selling the companies are in their 30s and 40s. They're serial entrepreneurs. So, I'm a baby boomer. I sort of think about baby boomers, but I also have to realize there's a whole population of business owners out there that they want to own 3 or 4 or 5 companies. Okay. So, but you still have to do the same thing to get those companies ready to sell as you do for somebody who's looking to retirement.
Well, and that's actually, very true. Some of the wealthiest people we talk about now in the news every day made their fortune in one company, parlayed it to another company, and some of them have diversified. You look at Elon Musk. He didn't start in aerospace. Right?
No, they love the process of starting and running in businesses. They like the idea of doing the strategy, creating the business. They hate running the company.
Yeah.
So they want to get out as soon as
I'm
as
thinking of
practically
Mark
possible.
Cuban. I'm thinking
Yeah.
of Jeff Bezos. Same
Yeah.
thing. They all
Yeah.
started somewhere else, but had those resources and skills to parlay that and use it for something else and diversify and still do the same thing over and over again.
Right. So as a result, I really began to focus on there's so many issues that business owners have to understand to get ready, for them to get ready and for their business to get ready to exit. It's so many things that you don't even think about. You think about running the business, not how do I really get the business ready to sell? How do I make sure that my books are really in proper financial, I'm not trying to minimize the taxes I pay. I'm trying to show that I actually make real money. That's a change in attitude. There's so many things around estate planning, tax minimization, potentially family issues. I built, along with several other companies, we built a 200-person online educational academy around exit planning.
Wow.
200 different topics that an owner might know about, or they may not know nothing about. So we take that and we build customized courses, so we help them get informed. The other challenge is to separate the owner from the business, because that's who they've been. And they have to start looking at, I built this asset. Oh, it has value. If I do something, if I work with somebody and increase the value, I can get more money for my retirement, or I can get more money to start my next business.
Yeah.
But until you separate the owner from the business, I had a situation in aerospace where we worked for a year, we got an unbelievable offer, and the owner just wouldn't sell the business because that's all he'd ever done.
Couldn't emotionally disconnect from it.
So you have to also be a psychologist and do personal planning and help them envision what life will be after they transition out.
Well,
that's just as important.
And the big takeaway I'm hearing from you really is, if you're thinking about exiting, you need to start talking to someone like you far in advance.
2 years.
Right. And I have the same issue in real estate.
Right.
Somebody says, I'm going to sell my house, I'm going to sell my house, I'm going to sell my house.
Right,
I'll call you
right.
when I'm ready. They call me and they're ready to go tomorrow. But we really didn't do some of the planning things we could have done to position that house, or on the other side of it, for a buyer.
Right.
There are some things we need to do. I often have people who are in private business, they have a cash business. And like you said, they're looking to minimize their taxes, not pump up how much they make. And so now they want to buy a house, but they didn't do that legwork 2 years in advance.
Right.
So 2 years.
No, yeah.
It takes time to plan.
And that's just, but then it takes another year to take it to market.
Yeah.
Because now you got to put together all the marketing stuff. You got to go reach out and find potential buyers. You have to negotiate letters of agreement with buyers that you have to actually close. So it's 2 years to get ready and 1 year to actually sell the business. And then the buyer may want you to stay on for 1 or 2 years. Right. So sometimes it's 5 years.
Right.
Before you really want to be out doing your own thing.
You're out next year and you're really not, if you do it right and maximize efficiency and return. So are you targeting any specific industry, or where anybody you're working with that's
exit planning is industry agnostic. Yeah. My background is manufacturing technology, so it's the most often done in terms of small businesses, but they may want to transfer to their kids or other family members, although that's becoming less and less because kids don't want the business. They can do a leverage management buyout where the management team buys out the company with bank financing to do that. They can create an ESOP, which is a legal way for them to begin to transfer the ownership. One of the other options is they can just stay on and try to build a management team that runs the company and they just take dividends every year.
Right.
Or we may be talking about liquidation. But there are 9 different paths that you could go down to transition out of your business.
Will some people choose to liquidate in an environment that was very healthy for them?
Right.
They will?
Some, if they're very, very asset rich,
yeah, well,
they have a lot of assets.
In other words, I'm the company. I can't really sell the company because it's me, right?
Right.
So in that case, I'm liquidating, I would think, right?
Right.
So there are situations
where
if
you've got a big customer base and can show an ongoing revenue stream and some kind of path, that's what I work a lot with, is getting the knowledge out of the owner's head, the contacts, the processes, the procedures that often only the owner knows. You have to get that documented. You have to get that transitioned to other people. If you can do that, then you might get something for your business, but not as much as if you had built this self-running entity. That's a lot of what exit planners do, is to try to create take what is probably an owner-dependent business and turn it into an owner-independent business. Yeah.
So if you connect with a client that's going to work on an exit strategy with you, and it's going to take a couple of years,
Right.
Are you meeting with them on a monthly basis, a weekly basis? Like how often is that?
It's at least once a month.
Yeah.
And you meet up front. After that, it's mostly by Zoom. That's convenient for them. That's convenient for me.
Mm-hmm.
And you have topics, and this month we're going to go through. So maybe you haven't done any estate planning. So this month we're going to talk about that. Now, that may go on for several hours, one month to the next. I will bring in a estate planning guru who really does it right for them. I'm really the exit planner is the quarterback.
Sure.
I have a trademark called the exit architect. And I like the word architect because we understand an architect designs the plan, but they don't go lay brick or put it down concrete or put in kitchens, but they lay out the entire plan. Similarly, that's what an exit planner does.
Interesting.
Yep.
How do you get paid?
It varies.
Some
clients some planners are on retainers.
Yeah.
Some I do by hour. I'm also a partner in a national M&A firm. So if we take the business and sell them through that part of my business, then we get success fees at the end. So there's many different ways.
That's what I was wondering. Is it tied to the sale maybe?
Well, like real estate, once you go to the final third stage and go to do a transaction, then you're paid a success fee.
But like in real estate, I don't make a dime until it's over.
That is,
and somebody can walk away, and I've been left working without being paid, right?
That is also true for much of M&A work.
Okay. Yeah.
So you're half the time you do the deal, you get the company ready, you find good buyers, and the owner still isn't really
That's hard.
ready to sell.
That's hard.
So, so there's an all kind of mixture of hourly, monthly retainers, or success fees that are involved in what I do.
That's great. Is there so your client is usually a CEO?
Oh, he is the owner.
Independent operator? Yeah.
Now, there might be multiple owners. I deal with that from time to time.
Partnerships?
Partnerships,
Yep.
or at least not legal partnership. They're more like the corporations. I don't deal with a lot of professional service companies personally.
Yeah.
So when there are multiple owners, it's usually a corporation in which they have shares.
What would be some good, intelligent questions for a potential client to ask you about exit interviewing, about exiting their business?
Well, what they should be asking is, what is the process? What are my options and what are the process? Those are the first two questions.
Right.
I need to get out in 3 years. What's my best option? So that's the first thing I generally talk to them about. I go through these 9 options and say, and there might be one or two that make sense, or there might be might be some combination of a couple of those options. The next question they really want to ask is, who do I need to bring in to help me?
Right.
Usually they have their accountant, who's, if a smaller business is not really the kind of accountant you want to do some of the sophisticated transaction work.
Sure.
They have a business attorney, but that attorney is probably not somebody who's done a bunch of transactions. So
they're doing contracts.
They're doing contracts for customers, not selling businesses,
and not preparing equity statements and figuring that
out.
Yeah.
So usually the client isn't asking that. I'm driving the client towards, okay, we may need to supplement some of the people that you're using now.
Yeah.
We'll use your accountant, that's great, but we also need somebody, your own cash basis, we need to move to accrual. Let's get somebody in to do that. You may need what's called a quality of earnings report. That's where you bring in an accounting firm to do stuff. So you take the people that they work with, you bring in 2 or 3, particularly estate and tax, that they probably don't have the best of the best. And
someone like Stefan in our group, who's very high level
planning.
Oh yeah,
he's a good example.
Yeah.
So you in fact build an advisory team, and between the exit planner, who's the quarterback, and all these other really best of the breed professionals, now they've got people who are really helping them do the right.
It sounds like it's not cheap to get out of business, but having said that, it's an investment in really getting a reward on the final exit.
Absolutely. One of the organizations that I work with, it's called the Value Builder System, and they've done research on 70,000 business owners, and they actually help they run a survey. It's a simple 15-minute survey, and you answer questions. You put in some basic financials, and then they come back and they say that your business is on a scale of something to 0 to 100. Most companies are 50. They've shown statistically over these 60, 70,000 people that if you're just average versus the 80th percentile in terms of how you've got the business ready to sell, those businesses sell for 71%
Wow.
higher than
Wow.
those who only score 50%.
That's a lot.
So then they have a whole methodology around how do we get you from 50 to...
In my head, it's like telling somebody a fresh coat of paint will go a long way. Right? I mean, I'm not going to tell you to remodel your kitchen.
No, right.
But a fresh coat of paint's a very small investment to get a big return on the end.
That's right.
This is really what this is.
Yes.
Investing in you and these other professionals to position your company, to put you in the best position, to get the most dollars, it's worth it.
Yeah, and here we're talking 25%, 50% better valuation, not a 5 or 10%, 15% that might be true in real estate.
Where do you sit in social media? Do you have websites? Do you have social media places?
On LinkedIn, not a Facebook person, but
Okay.
I live on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I have other advisors that use my planning educational academy, so we all tend to work on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Is there anything I didn't ask you that I should have asked you about your business that we'd want to tell our audience today?
Oh, that's
exit planning.
That's a good
What
question.
did I miss?
No, I think we covered it. I think we've sort of told the story of how I got here, and I love doing it.
Yeah.
There is no job is the same. No client's the same.
I can imagine it's rewarding helping somebody reach their goal.
Absolutely. And every option is different. Every situation is different. Every plan is different. It's not a cookie cutter. It is a customized program where every owner is unique and different. That's what I love.
Well, listen, it was terrific talking to you today and getting to learn more about you and your business. But I'm really just so impressed with how much experience you have in so many different areas. And I can see how they all come together to really facilitate what you're doing now, really abroad.
Yeah, I was very lucky.
Usually you meet people that have a lot of experience here, a lot of experience here.
Right.
But you kind of come across not just industry segments, but also the jobs within those industries.
Right.
So great job for you, Rich.
Thank you. Nice that we had this chance to chat.
Yeah, so again, we're going to be on Spotify, we'll be on YouTube. We will be on, what else is there? TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and it'll eventually be on your LinkedIn profile as well. We'll get that video posted. Charlie will get a little teaser up. We'll have all your connections out there so people can reach out. Well, last question. Consultation. You have an initial consultation with somebody?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Is there a charge for that?
Absolutely not.
Okay, that's what I thought. So somebody's thinking about it. We're going to give you the information. Contact Richard. You have a conversation with him. And then from there, you could decide at no cost whether or not he's the resource you need to move forward, right?
Great. Michael, this has been a pleasure.
Great job. Thanks very much, Richard.
Thank you much.